Hi, it's Charles McCall again, and we're on our Mentoring Leaders channel, which I've created to be informal, impromptu, not very planned, and so you get who I am and you get what you see. And so I'm just sharing thoughts. As I read my daily devotions, as I work my way through my Bible, I'm just sharing some thoughts with you that hopefully will be beneficial. And so we're in 1 Timothy chapter 6, and the Apostle Paul is encouraging his son Timothy, his son in the faith Timothy. A very personal letter. It's the advice of a spiritual father speaking to his spiritual son. And the book of Proverbs is full of admonitions. Children, listen to the advice of your father. Listen to the words of your father so that you don't make the same mistakes that he does. And so it would be very wise for us to look at the teaching, the admonitions, the cautions, the warnings that the apostle gives to his spiritual son, and for us to learn as well as leaders so that we can have positive influence over others. And so he's talking about the love of money. He's talking about falling into temptation. He's talking about contentment. And talking about people who are pierced with many sorrows because they've had wrong financial priorities. They've had wrong priorities in regards to their life in this world. And it's hurt them and it's hurt others, is what Paul is trying to talk to his son in the faith about. And we come to verse 11. And Paul says to Timothy, "But you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness." Flee what? Flee the things that he's been talking about. He's telling Timothy that you should flee a wrong attitude about employee-employer relationships, and about those whom God has placed over you in your life. You need to get away from that wrong attitude of not giving them the kind of honor that God expects you and I to give those who have authority in our life. You need to flee your argumentativeness. If there's any argumentative spirit in you, or any rebellious or something on the inside that stands up against those that God has placed in your life, or those that God has put into your life, or those who disagree with you. Timothy, don't fall into it. Don't fall into disrespect of those that God has put in your life. Don't fall into arguing about the details of words and things like that. You need to flee it. You need to flee being discontent. I'll just say it again about many Christian leaders, especially pastors. Very easy to be discontent because most pastors aren't getting rich. Most pastors have chosen, and Christian leaders, even Bible school teachers and missionaries and those that are serving in other capacities, they have chosen to choose a path, to follow a path of life, of serving others and sacrificing for others, rather than a path of life to acquiring wealth and riches. They've responded to their calling. And so it's really quite easy and common for Christian leaders to become jealous of what others have and frustrated because of what they don't have, of just trying to make ends meet. And so the Apostle Paul says to don't fall into that, Timothy. Don't fall into discontent. Don't fall into the love of money. You know, I'll tell you, if you're a missionary, or if you're a Christian leader, if you're a pastor and you're driving an old beat-up car, or if you're here in Cambodia and you don't have anything, you live in a thatch hut, you live in a wood house, and your children are getting older and they need to go to school, it's very easy to fall into the temptation of the love of money and comparing yourself with others and becoming jealous and falling into that snare. I meet with that those issues in our pastors all the time. And two pastors that I'm particularly thinking of that have 6 children. And I met with them a few years ago, and I said, man, you guys are doing so good. You're planting house churches and cell groups all over your district in your province, and I'm so proud of you. And one of them responded, he said, yes, Pastor, we're doing the work, but we think about our children every day. Because our children are not small any longer. We want our children to have a good education. We want our children to have a good future. We want the next generation of our family to have a good future. And sometimes we don't have enough to feed them everything they want or to buy the clothes for them that we would like to buy for them. These are huge temptations. And so I don't know what Timothy's financial situation was, but Paul is speaking to all of us. And he's saying, look, these are issues. And I'm encouraging you, flee the temptation to lust for money. Flee the temptation to try to get rich quick. Flee the temptation to try to change your focus into an area that God has not called you to do. I can just tell you for myself, there's been many times that my family and I have lacked. Many times when we've had to work second jobs. Many times when I've thought about how can I make more money. And you know what? I've tried doing sales jobs this and sales jobs that and getting into it. And I just realized that, for me, I can't do that. I can't focus on 2 things. Maybe it's my personality, maybe it's the plan of God, I don't know. But I can't focus on running a business and doing all that God has called me to do. So I've got to choose one or the other. And there are some pastors who can. There are many pastors that are successful business people, and they run a business, and they don't receive a salary even from the church, but they receive a salary from the business that they run, and they're able to do it. Well, God bless them. I'm very happy that they can. I've tried it, and for me, I can't do it. And so Paul is encouraging pastors, and this is what I would say to pastors and Christian leaders. I think it's really important for you to focus on what God has called you to do. That if God has called you to run a business and also to build a church, praise God. You have more ability than I do, and that's not surprising. But if God has called you to focus your attention on His people, on raising up leaders and training them and releasing them and building a great church that will have positive influence in society, you really need to flee the other things that Paul mentions here. And you need to focus on righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness. Focus on what God has called you to do.